The fluorescent lights above Naomi Thompson's hospital bed flickered as another wave of pain crashed through her body. Her hands shook as she gripped her phone, fingers slick with sweat. Blood soaked through the thin hospital gown, pooling beneath her on the white sheets. The monitors beside her bed screamed with urgent beeping, and somewhere in the distance she could hear nurses shouting. 7 months pregnant. 3 babies inside her. All of them dying. "Please," she whispered to no one, her vision blurring. "Please, someone help my babies." The room spun. Her fingers fumbled across the phone screen, trying to find her sister's contact. Yolanda. She needed Yolanda. The pain made it hard to think, hard to see, hard to do anything but exist in this moment of terror. She typed frantically, tears streaming down her beautiful dark brown face. "Yoli, I need help. I'm at Mercy General. Something's wrong with the babies. I'm bleeding so much. The doctor says I need a treatment that costs $300,000 and insurance won't cover it all. I don't have that kind of money. I don't know what to do. Please, I can't lose them. I can't lose my babies. They're all I have left. Please help me." She hit send and let the phone fall from her trembling hands. The ceiling tiles above her seemed to pulse and breathe. A nurse in bright blue scrubs rushed to her side, calling for the doctor. More hands on her body. More voices. Everything felt far away, like she was underwater. Through the fog of pain and medication, one thought pierced her mind with crystal clarity. What if she never got to hold her babies? What if they died before taking their first breath? What if this was how her story ended, alone in a hospital room, her children slipping away before they even had a chance to live? The phone buzzed on the bed beside her, but Naomi couldn't reach it. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. The last thing she heard before unconsciousness took her was a doctor's urgent voice. "We're losing her. Get her to surgery now." Hours later, when Naomi's eyes fluttered open in the recovery room, the first thing she saw was her phone screen glowing in the dim light. Her sister's name wasn't on the screen. Instead, she saw a different name, one that made her heart stop for an entirely different reason. Nathan Bradford. Her ex-husband. The man she'd divorced 6 months ago. The billionaire who'd walked away from their marriage without looking back. With trembling fingers, she opened her messages and felt her stomach drop. The desperate plea she'd meant to send to her sister had gone to Nathan instead. Every word. Every detail about the babies he didn't know existed. Every mention of the money she desperately needed. "No," she breathed, panic rising in her chest. "No, no, no." Below her message, she saw 3 dots indicating he was typing. Then words appeared that would change everything. "I'm on my way. Don't worry about anything. I'll take care of it all." Naomi stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Part of her wanted to text back, to tell him it was a mistake, to refuse his help. But as she felt the flutter of 3 tiny lives still fighting inside her, she knew she couldn't afford her pride. Not when her babies' lives hung in the balance. The nurse came in to check her vitals, explaining in a gentle voice that they'd managed to stop the bleeding temporarily, but she wasn't out of danger yet. The babies were in distress. Without the specialized treatment, they had maybe 48 hours before the situation became critical again. "Is there someone we should call?" the nurse asked kindly, adjusting the 4-drip. Naomi closed her eyes, tears sliding down her temples. "He's already on his way." Have you ever made a choice that haunted you for months? A decision that seemed right at the time but left you wondering, what if, every single day? If you've ever felt the weight of regret, you need to hear how this story unfolds. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens when Nathan arrives at that hospital. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you accept help from someone who broke your heart? Because what Naomi decides in the next few hours will determine if her babies survive. 6 months earlier, the penthouse apartment overlooking Lake Michigan had felt like a cage. Naomi stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows in her emerald green dress, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Behind her, she could hear Nathan's voice on yet another conference call, his tone sharp and businesslike. It was their 3rd wedding anniversary. The reservation at her favorite restaurant had been for 7 o'clock. It was now 9:30, and Nathan was still on the phone. "I understand the Tokyo investors are concerned," Nathan said, pacing across the marble floor in his tailored navy suit. "But the projections are solid. We're looking at a 40% increase in the 4th quarter. Naomi turned away from the window, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. She'd spent an hour getting ready, styling her natural hair into elegant twists, applying makeup carefully, choosing the dress she knew he loved. All for nothing. This was their life now. Had been for the past year. Nathan's tech company had grown from successful to astronomical, and he'd grown right along with it, expanding into something she barely recognized. The man she'd married 3 years ago, the one who'd surprised her with handwritten notes and spontaneous weekend trips, had been replaced by someone who lived and breathed profit margins and market shares. "Nathan," she said quietly when he finally ended the call. "The reservation was 2 hours ago." He looked up, and for a moment she saw genuine regret in his hazel eyes. He ran a hand through his dark brown hair, loosening his tie. "I know. I'm sorry. That call was important. We're about to close a deal worth $200 million. Our anniversary was important too. We can celebrate tomorrow. Or this weekend. I'll clear my schedule." Naomi shook her head slowly. "You said that last month for my birthday. And the month before that for my job promotion. You always say you'll clear your schedule, but you never do. That's not fair." Nathan's voice took on an edge. "I'm building something here. I'm trying to secure our future." "What future?" The words came out sharper than she intended. "A future where you're always working and I'm always waiting? Where we're roommates instead of husband and wife? I'm doing this for us." "No." Naomi moved closer, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overflow. "You're doing this for you. Because somewhere along the way, building your empire became more important than building our marriage." Nathan's jaw tightened. "You knew who I was when you married me. You knew I was ambitious. I married someone who made time for the people he loved. Someone who actually came home for dinner. Someone who remembered our anniversary. This again." Nathan turned away, his shoulders tense. "Every conversation ends up here. Me working too much. Me not being present enough. I can't win, Naomi. No matter what I do, it's never enough for you." The accusation stung because it was so unfair. She'd tried everything. She'd adjusted her own work schedule at the community center where she counseled at-risk teens. She'd planned date nights that he canceled. She'd suggested couples therapy that he said he was too busy to attend. She'd bent and compromised and waited, and still she came last. "I'm not asking you to stop working," she said, fighting to keep her voice calm. "I'm asking you to remember that you have a wife. That we made promises to each other. That marriage takes effort from both people. And what effort are you making?" Nathan spun back around, and now there was anger in his eyes. "You knew my work was demanding when we got married. You said you supported my ambitions. But now you're trying to change me." "I'm not trying to change you. I'm trying to save us." "Maybe there's nothing to save." The words hung in the air between them like poison. "Maybe we made a mistake." Naomi felt something inside her chest crack. "Is that really what you think?" Nathan looked at her, and in his eyes she saw exhaustion and frustration and something that looked like resignation. "I don't know anymore. All I know is that I'm tired of feeling guilty for working hard. I'm tired of coming home to disappointment in your eyes. I'm tired of fighting." "Then what do you want to do?" Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "I think." Nathan paused, and Naomi saw the moment he made the decision. "I think maybe we both need to be honest about what we want. And maybe what we want isn't the same thing anymore." The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of lawyers and paperwork. Nathan moved into a hotel suite. Naomi stayed in the penthouse, walking through rooms that felt too big and too empty. She'd wanted to fight for their marriage, but Nathan seemed determined to end it quickly and cleanly. He offered her a generous settlement, the penthouse, enough money to never have to worry again. But Naomi didn't want his money. She wanted the man she'd married. The one who used to dance with her in the kitchen. The one who'd proposed during a rainstorm because he couldn't wait for the perfect moment. That man was gone, replaced by someone who scheduled their divorce between board meetings. On the day they signed the papers, Nathan arrived at the lawyer's office in a charcoal gray suit, looking tired but resolved. Naomi wore a maroon dress, her hair pulled back simply, her face bare of makeup. There seemed to be nothing left to say. "I hope you find what you're looking for," Nathan said as they stood in the hallway afterward, the signed documents making everything final. Naomi looked at him, this man she'd loved so completely, and felt the full weight of their ending. "I already found it once. But he chose something else." Nathan flinched but didn't respond. He turned and walked toward the elevator, his phone already at his ear, already moving on to the next thing. Naomi watched him go, placing one hand on her stomach without realizing it, not yet knowing that she was already carrying the secret that would bring them back together. She left the lawyer's office and went back to the penthouse, packing her things into boxes. She didn't want to stay there, surrounded by memories of what they'd lost. By the end of the week, she'd moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a quieter neighborhood, started her new job as a school counselor, and tried to convince herself that this was the beginning of her new life. But at night, alone in her smaller bed, she still reached for Nathan in her sleep. Still woke up expecting to hear his voice. The divorce had been his choice, his decision, but the grief belonged to both of them whether he admitted it or not. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Naomi sat in Dr. Lisa Chen's office, staring at the ultrasound image in her hands. 3 tiny shapes. 3 heartbeats that had flickered on the screen moments ago. 3 lives growing inside her. Triplets, Dr. Chen repeated gently, giving Naomi time to process. Identical twins and a fraternal sibling. Based on the measurements, I'd say you're about 8 weeks along. Naomi's mind raced backward. 8 weeks. That would have been right before things completely fell apart with Nathan. One of the last times they'd been together, during a rare weekend when he'd actually been present. She remembered that Saturday morning, how he'd rolled over and pulled her close, how for just a few hours they'd felt like themselves again. And now she was carrying 3 of his children and he didn't know. Couldn't know. Because they were divorced and he'd made it clear he was done with their marriage. Are you okay? Dr. Chen's voice was concerned. I know this is a lot to take in. Triplet pregnancies are high risk and will require careful monitoring. Do you have support at home? Family? A partner? My sister lives nearby, Naomi said automatically, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. I have support. But support and raising 3 babies alone were very different things. As Naomi left the clinic with a folder full of information about multiple births and prenatal care, reality crashed over her in waves. She was going to be a mother. Of 3. As a single woman. In a 2-bedroom apartment. On a school counselor's salary. She should tell Nathan. The logical part of her brain knew that. He deserved to know he was going to be a father. But every time she reached for her phone to call him, she remembered the look in his eyes when he'd said maybe they'd made a mistake. She remembered how quickly he'd filed for divorce. How easily he'd walked away. Would he even want these babies? Or would they become another obligation that got in the way of his work? Another disappointment he had to manage? Naomi drove to her sister Yolanda's house, a cozy bungalow with a bright red door and flower boxes in the windows. Yolanda was 5 years older, married to a kind man named Jerome with 2 kids of her own. When Naomi walked in and burst into tears, Yolanda wrapped her in a hug and didn't ask questions until the crying stopped. I'm pregnant, Naomi finally said, sitting at Yolanda's kitchen table with a cup of tea. With triplets? And Nathan doesn't know. Yolanda's eyes went wide. Triplets? Girl, that's a lot. And Nathan doesn't know? You have to tell him. What? He made it clear he didn't want to be married to me anymore. Why would he want to be tied to me through 3 babies? Because they're his children too. Yolanda reached across the table and took Naomi's hand. I know you're hurt. I know the divorce was awful. But keeping this from him isn't right and it's not fair to you either. You're going to need help. Financial help, physical help, everything. I can do this alone. You shouldn't have to. Yolanda squeezed her hand. And honey, I love you, but raising triplets alone is not some kind of pride competition. Those babies deserve to have their father in their lives if he's willing. And you deserve support. But Naomi couldn't shake the image of Nathan's face when he'd said he was tired of fighting. She couldn't forget how he'd walked away so easily. Telling him about the babies felt like giving him power to hurt her all over again. What if he didn't care? What if he offered money but nothing else? What if he saw their children as another business transaction to be managed? I'll think about it, Naomi promised, but she'd already made up her mind. The weeks turned into months. Naomi's body changed, her belly growing larger with 3 lives. She worked at the school until her doctor ordered modified bed rest. She attended every prenatal appointment, saw every ultrasound, heard every heartbeat. She decorated the small 2nd bedroom with soft yellow walls and 3 cribs that Yolanda and Jerome helped her assemble. Sometimes, late at night, she'd look at the ultrasound pictures taped to her refrigerator and wonder what Nathan would think if he could see them. Would he be excited? Scared? Would he care at all? But then she'd remember the endless conference calls, the missed dinners, the way work always came first. And she'd tell herself that her babies deserved better than a part-time father who fit them into his schedule between meetings. They deserved someone who would choose them first always. If Nathan couldn't be that person for her, how could he be that person for them? At 5 months pregnant, Naomi stopped by the community center where she used to work before taking the school counselor job. Some of the teens she'd mentored were there, and they gathered around her, excited about the babies, asking if she knew what she was having yet. 2 boys and a girl, Naomi told them, her hand resting on her round belly. At her last ultrasound, the doctor had been able to tell her the genders. They're going to be a handful. "You'll be a great mom," one of the girls said, a 16-year-old named Tasha who Naomi had worked with for 2 years. "You helped me get through so much. Your kids are lucky." Standing there, surrounded by these teenagers who'd become like family to her, Naomi felt a surge of determination. Maybe she was doing this alone, but alone didn't mean powerless. She'd built a life here, a community, people who cared about her. She could raise her children with love and support, even without Nathan. What she didn't know yet was that pregnancy complications don't care about determination or pride. That in a few short weeks, her body would betray her, and she'd need help from the one person she'd sworn she could live without. The first sign that something was wrong came during Naomi's 20-week ultrasound. The technician spent longer than usual examining the screen, her expression growing concerned. She excused herself and returned with Dr. Chin, who took over the examination with gentle but serious movements. "Naomi," Dr. Chin said carefully, "I'm seeing some early signs of concern. Your blood pressure is elevated and there's some unusual fluid retention. With triplets we always watch closely for preeclampsia. I want to run some additional tests." The blood tests confirmed what Dr. Chin had suspected. Naomi's protein levels were elevated, her blood pressure climbing steadily higher. She was in the early stages of preeclampsia, a dangerous condition that could threaten both her life and her baby's lives. "The good news is we caught it early," Dr. Chin explained in her office after reviewing the results. "The bad news is that with triplets this could progress quickly. I'm putting you on modified bed rest immediately. That means no work, minimal activity, and we'll be monitoring you very closely." Naomi sat in the chair across from the doctor, wearing a bright blue maternity dress, and tried to process what this meant. "But I just started the school counselor job 4 months ago. I haven't built up much leave time. I understand that's difficult, but your health and your baby's health have to come first. The school will understand. This is a medical necessity, not a choice." Walking out of the clinic that day, Naomi felt the weight of her situation settle over her like a heavy blanket. She called the school and explained the situation. Her supervisor was understanding but explained that she'd have to go on unpaid leave after her small amount of sick time ran out. In 2 weeks, her income would drop to nothing. Yolanda helped where she could, bringing groceries, checking in daily, sitting with Naomi during the long, boring days of bed rest. But Yolanda had her own family, her own job, her own life. She couldn't be there every moment. "You need to tell Nathan," Yolanda said for the 100th time, sitting on the edge of Naomi's bed while Naomi lay propped up on pillows, her belly enormous at 6 months. "Girl, you're dealing with a high-risk pregnancy alone. This is bigger than your pride." "I'm not trying to be prideful," Naomi protested, though she knew that wasn't entirely true. "I just don't want to need him." "But you do need him. Or at least you need his resources. Do you know how much these medical bills are going to cost? Have you looked at the insurance statements?" Naomi had looked. The numbers were terrifying. Even with insurance, the costs of carrying triplets, the specialist appointments, the monitoring, the inevitable early delivery and NICU time, all of it was adding up to amounts she couldn't comprehend. She'd used most of the divorce settlement to buy baby supplies and cover her reduced income. She had some savings but not nearly enough. At night, lying in bed trying to find a comfortable position with 3 babies pressing against her organs, Naomi would feel panic rise in her chest. What had she done? Why had she thought she could handle this alone? Pride was one thing, but now she was risking her children's health because she was too stubborn to ask for help. But every time she considered calling Nathan, she imagined the conversation. Him feeling trapped, obligated, resentful. She didn't want to be another burden in his life. Another thing he had to manage while checking his phone during important meetings. The weeks crawled by. Naomi's world shrank to her bedroom, her bathroom, and occasionally the living room couch. She watched endless television shows, read books, did everything she could to stay calm and keep her blood pressure down. But her body had other plans. At 27 weeks, during a routine monitoring appointment, Dr. Chen's expression grew grave as she reviewed the latest test results. "Naomi, your condition is worsening. Your blood pressure is very high despite medication, and I'm concerned about your kidney function. The babies are also showing some signs of distress. They're smaller than they should be at this stage." "What does that mean?" Naomi's voice trembled. "It means we're moving into dangerous territory. If your condition continues to decline, we may need to deliver the babies early. Much earlier than we'd like. But right now, every week they stay inside you, the better their chances. We're walking a very fine line." Dr. Chin increased Naomi's monitoring to twice-weekly appointments. Each trip to the hospital left Naomi more exhausted than the last. Yolanda drove her when she could, But sometimes Naomi had to take rideshares, climbing into the backseat of strangers' cars, her massive belly making every movement difficult. The medical bills piled up on her kitchen table. Collection notices started arriving. Naomi would look at them and feel the stress spike through her body, which only made her condition worse. It was a terrible cycle. Stress increased her blood pressure, which increased her medical needs, which increased her bills, which increased her stress. At night, she'd lie awake and think about Nathan. Wonder where he was, what deals he was making, what new height his company had reached. Did he ever think about her? Did he regret the divorce? Or had he moved on completely, her memory filed away in some distant corner of his mind? She wanted to hate him for how easily he'd let her go. But late at night, with his children moving inside her, she couldn't hate him. She could only miss him and wish things had been different. At 29 weeks, Naomi woke up in the middle of the night feeling strange. Her head pounded, her vision was blurry, and when she tried to stand up, the room spun violently. She managed to reach her phone and call Yolanda, but her words came out slurred and confused. "Something's wrong," she managed to say. "Can't see right. Everything's spinning." "I'm calling an ambulance," Yolanda said, her voice tight with fear. "Stay on the phone with me, honey. Help is coming." The ambulance arrived within minutes. The EMTs, a man and woman in bright green uniforms, moved quickly and efficiently, checking her vitals, asking questions. Naomi tried to answer but couldn't focus. Everything felt distant and hazy. At the hospital, Dr. Chin met them in the emergency room. After examining Naomi and reviewing her labs, the doctor's expression was grim. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high. We're moving you to the high-risk unit and starting magnesium sulfate to prevent seizures. Naomi, I need you to understand how serious this is. Your life is at risk. The baby's lives are at risk. We're doing everything we can, but you need to prepare yourself. We may have to deliver soon even though it's very early." Lying in the hospital bed, monitors beeping around her, Naomi felt tears slide down her face. Her babies were too small. Too early. They needed more time. But her body was failing them, failing all of them. "Please," she whispered to Dr. Chin. "Please don't let them die. Do whatever you have to do. I don't care about the cost. Just save my babies." Dr. Chin squeezed her hand gently. "We're going to do everything possible. But Naomi, the specialized treatment you need, the level of monitoring, the potential for extended NICU time for 3 premature babies, the costs are going to be substantial. Very substantial. Does your insurance cover this? Do you have resources available?" Naomi closed her eyes, knowing the answer. Her insurance had caps, limits, maximum out-of-pocket expenses that she'd already nearly reached. The specialized treatments Dr. Chen was talking about would go far beyond what her coverage would pay. "I'll figure it out," Naomi said, but they both knew it was an empty promise. "Let me see what I can do," Dr. Chen said kindly. "There are sometimes charity programs, assistance funds. Let me make some calls." After Dr. Chen left, Naomi lay in the hospital bed and finally let herself cry. Really cry. For her babies who might not survive. For her body that was betraying them. For the choices she'd made that had led her here, alone in a hospital room with no one to help her carry this impossible burden. She'd been so determined to prove she didn't need Nathan. So convinced that she could do this alone. But now, with everything falling apart, she realized that sometimes strength isn't about refusing help. Sometimes strength is about knowing when to ask for it. But it was too late now. Even if she wanted to call Nathan, even if she swallowed her pride and told him everything, what could he do? Show up and write a check? Offer money but nothing else? She didn't want to be his charity case. Didn't want him to help out of obligation. The night stretched long and dark. Yolanda arrived and sat beside the bed, holding Naomi's hand, praying softly. And Naomi, exhausted and scared and so very alone, finally fell into a fitful sleep, not knowing that the crisis was only beginning. Naomi stayed in the hospital for 5 days. The magnesium sulfate made her feel sluggish and strange, like she was moving through water. But it kept her from seizing, kept her alive, kept the baby safe for now. Each morning, Dr. Chen would come in with new test results, new adjustments to her medication, new expressions of cautious concern. On the 5th day, Naomi's blood pressure stabilized enough that Dr. Chen felt comfortable sending her home with strict orders and a blood pressure cuff to monitor herself 3 times daily. She was now 30 weeks pregnant, 3/4 of the way through, but still dangerously early for triplets. "You've bought yourself some time," Dr. Chen said, reviewing discharge instructions. "But Naomi, I can't stress this enough. Any concerning symptoms, any changes in vision, Any severe headaches and you call immediately. Don't wait. This condition can turn critical very quickly. Yolanda took Naomi home and helped her settle back into bed. The apartment felt different now, charged with the awareness of how close they'd all come to disaster. The 3 cribs stood in the nursery, waiting for babies who might arrive any moment. Naomi looked at them and tried to imagine 3 tiny humans, tried to picture herself as their mother, but fear made it hard to see past the next hour, the next day. I talked to Jerome, Yolanda said, sitting on the edge of the bed. We want to help more. With money, I mean. We have some savings. No. Naomi shook her head. You have your own kids. Your own expenses. I can't take your money. You're my sister. Your babies are my family. We want to help. And I love you for it. But Yoli, the doctor says if things get worse, if they have to deliver early and the babies need extended NICU care, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maybe more. Your savings wouldn't even make a dent, and I won't let you drain your accounts for this. Yolanda looked at her with frustration and love mixed together. Then what are you going to do? I don't know yet, Naomi admitted. Dr. Chin mentioned some assistance programs. I'll apply for everything I can. And maybe the babies will stay in longer. Maybe I'll make it to 34 or 35 weeks, and they'll be okay without major interventions. It was wishful thinking and they both knew it. But hope was all Naomi had left. The next 2 weeks passed in careful routine. Naomi monitored her blood pressure 3 times a day, recording every reading. She took her medications exactly on schedule. She stayed in bed or on the couch, moving only when absolutely necessary. Yolanda came by daily, bringing meals, checking on her, making sure she followed the doctor's orders. Friends from the community center visited sometimes, bringing well wishes and small gifts for the babies. The teens Naomi had mentored pooled their money and bought 3 matching outfits in bright primary colors. Tasha, the 16-year-old, had written a card that said, "You taught me to never give up. Now don't you give up either." Those visits sustained Naomi through the long, lonely days. Reminded her that even without Nathan, she wasn't truly alone. She had people who cared. People who would help however they could. But at night, when everyone went home and the apartment was quiet except for the distant sounds of city traffic, Naomi would lie in bed and think about Nathan. She'd look at her phone, his contact still saved, his number still memorized. Sometimes she'd start to type a message, her fingers hovering over the keys. I need to tell you something. But she never sent it. Pride, fear, hurt, all of it kept her silent. At 32 weeks, during her twice-weekly appointment, Dr. Chen's face grew serious as she reviewed the ultrasound. The babies were all measuring small for their gestational age. Too small. And Naomi's blood pressure was creeping up again despite maximum medication. I'm admitting you, Dr. Chen said. We need to monitor you around the clock. I think we're getting close to delivery time, and I want you here where we can respond immediately if needed. Naomi called Yolanda from the hospital room later that evening. She's saying it could be any day now. The babies are too small and my blood pressure won't stay down. Okay. Yolanda's voice was steady, trying to be strong for both of them. Okay. That's still 32 weeks. Babies born at 32 weeks do okay, right? They have a good chance. With the right care, yes. But Yoli, that's the problem. The right care is expensive. Dr. Chin started talking about specialists, neonatal intensive care, possible surgeries if there are complications. She gave me an estimate of costs and it's... Naomi's voice broke. It's more than I can manage. Even if I drained every account, sold everything I own, it wouldn't be enough. What did she say? Are there programs? She's looking into it. But most of the charity programs have long waiting lists or strict income requirements. Because of the divorce settlement, I might not qualify. But the settlement money is almost gone, spent on all the months of medical care already. I'm caught in the middle. Too much money to qualify for help, not enough to actually afford what the babies need. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Yolanda said quietly, Naomi, you know what I'm going to say. Don't. He's their father. He deserves to know and they deserve his support. This isn't about you and him anymore. It's about 3 babies who need every possible advantage to survive. I know. Naomi wiped tears from her face. I know you're right. But I'm scared, Yoli. What if he doesn't care? What if knowing about them just makes him angry that I kept it from him? What if he helps but resents me and them for it? I can't handle that on top of everything else. And what if he wants to help? What if he's grateful you told him? What if he steps up? Naomi thought about the Nathan who'd filed for divorce. The one who'd chosen work over their marriage every single time. That Nathan wouldn't step up. But there was another Nathan, buried under years of ambition and drive. The Nathan who'd once driven 3 hours in a snowstorm because she had the flu and needed soup. The Nathan who'd held her while she cried after a bad day at work. The Nathan who'd looked at her on their wedding day like she was his entire world. Was that Nathan still in there somewhere? I'll think about it, Naomi said, but time was running out for thinking. Her body was making decisions for her, pushing toward a delivery that was coming whether she was ready or not. 2 days later, at 3 in the morning, Naomi woke to wetness soaking the hospital bed. Her water had broken. Not one sack but all 3. The monitors started alarming immediately, and within seconds her room filled with medical staff. Dr. Chin arrived, still in her street clothes, called in from home. She examined Naomi quickly, her face grave. All 3 sacks have ruptured. We need to deliver now. These babies are coming today. But it's too early, Naomi gasped. They're too small. I know. But we don't have a choice anymore. Your body has made the decision for us. Dr. Chin squeezed her hand. I'm going to be honest with you, Naomi. This is going to be very challenging. The babies are small, they're premature, and there are 3 of them. They're going to need extensive care. The kind of care that's going to be very, very expensive. I don't care about the cost, Naomi said, though they both knew that wasn't realistic. Just save them. Please. Dr. Chin nodded and turned to consult with her team. Naomi heard fragments of their discussion. NICU preparations. Ventilators. Warming beds. Specialist teams on standby. Each word was another dollar sign, another impossible expense, another reminder of how alone she was in this moment. As they wheeled her toward the operating room, Naomi felt panic claw at her chest. This was happening. Right now. And she wasn't ready. Didn't have the money, didn't have the support, didn't have Nathan. In the pre-op area, as the anesthesiologist explained the epidural procedure, Naomi's phone buzzed in the bag Yolanda had brought with her belongings. Without thinking, she reached for it. Yolanda had been notified and was on her way, but she was still 20 minutes out. Naomi looked at her phone, at Nathan's contact information, at the last message they'd exchanged months ago during the divorce. Her fingers trembled as she opened a new text. She needed to tell him. Before the surgery, before anything happened, he needed to know he had children. That no matter what happened today, he was a father. But her mind was foggy from stress and fear and the medications they were already pumping into her for. Her vision blurred. The room felt too bright, too loud, too much. She tried to type a message to Yolanda, to tell her to call Nathan, to explain everything if something went wrong. The anesthesiologist was ready. They needed to start. Naomi's fingers moved across the phone screen, trying to form coherent words, but everything was getting hazy. She hit send on something, she wasn't sure what, and then the phone slipped from her hands as they wheeled her into the operating room. She didn't see the message that had been sent. Didn't know that in her confused state she'd sent it to the wrong person. Didn't know that Nathan Bradford, halfway around the world in a Tokyo hotel room, was about to receive a message that would change everything. The last thing Naomi saw before they put her under was the bright lights of the operating room, and she whispered a prayer into the antiseptic air. Please let my babies live. Please let them be okay. Please. Nathan Bradford sat in his Tokyo hotel suite at 2 in the afternoon, 17 hours ahead of Chicago time, reviewing quarterly projections with his CFO via video call. The meeting was running long as they always did, diving into every detail of the company's performance across all markets. His phone buzzed on the desk beside his laptop. He ignored it, staying focused on the spreadsheet displayed on his screen. The phone buzzed again. And again. Nathan, are you seeing these numbers for the Asia-Pacific region? His CFO asked. Hold on, Nathan said, glancing at his phone. The preview of the message made his breath catch. Yoli, I need help. I'm at Mercy General. But it wasn't from someone named Yoli. It was from Naomi. His ex-wife. The woman he'd divorced 6 months ago. The woman he tried not to think about every single day since. I need to call you back, Nathan said abruptly, ending the video call before his CFO could respond. He grabbed his phone and opened the full message. Yoli, I need help. I'm at Mercy General. Something's wrong with the babies. I'm bleeding so much. The doctor says I need a treatment that costs $300,000 and insurance won't cover it all. Don't have that kind of money. I don't know what to do. Please, I can't lose them. I can't lose my babies. They're all I have left. Please help me. Nathan read the message 3 times, his mind struggling to process the words. Babies. Naomi was having babies. His babies. Had to be his babies. The timeline would match up. But why hadn't she told him? Why was she at a hospital, bleeding, saying something was wrong? His hands shook as he typed a response. I'm on my way. Don't worry about anything. I'll take care of it all. Then he was moving, grabbing his laptop, his passport, throwing things into his carry-on bag. He called his assistant while packing, words tumbling out rapid fire. Cancel everything. All of it. The dinner tonight, the factory tour tomorrow, the investor meetings, everything for the next month. I need a flight to Chicago, first available, I don't care what it costs. Charter a plane if you have to. And call Mercy General Hospital in Chicago, find out about a patient named Naomi Thompson, find out what's going on. Call my lawyers, have them contact the hospital administration. Tell them I'm covering all costs, everything, no limits. Just get me on a plane now. His assistant, used to his demanding requests but never having heard this tone of panic in his voice, didn't ask questions. I'm on it. I'll call you back in 5 minutes. Nathan stood in his hotel room, his carefully organized world tilting on its axis. Babies. Naomi was having his babies and hadn't told him. Was in the hospital, in danger, asking for help. She'd meant to text someone else, that was clear, but she'd sent it to him instead. A mistake that had just revealed a secret he should have known months ago. He felt anger surge through him. Why hadn't she told him? How could she keep something like this from him? But the anger was immediately swallowed by fear. She was bleeding. Something was wrong. She could lose the babies. Could lose? Nathan sat down hard on the bed, his mind racing. How many babies? She'd said babies, plural. Twins? More? And why was she asking about money? He had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. If his children needed something, cost was completely irrelevant. His phone rang. His assistant, efficient as always. United has a flight leaving Haneda in 90 minutes. I've booked you first class. Car is already on its way to pick you up. I've contacted the hospital. They have a Naomi Thompson in their system, admitted to the high-risk pregnancy unit. I explained your family and will be covering all medical expenses. They're updating her file now. Flight time is 11 hours. You'll land at O'Hare around 9 p.m. Chicago time, accounting for the time difference. Thank you. What else did the hospital say? They couldn't give me specific medical details due to privacy laws, but they did confirm it's a high-risk multiple birth situation. They said you should speak directly with her medical team when you arrive. Multiple birth. Twins. Maybe more. Nathan felt his chest tighten. He'd never thought about being a father. Had always pushed the idea into some distant, theoretical future. And now he was going to be a father to multiples, and the mother of his children was in crisis. The flight to the airport was a blur. The time at the airport, going through the diplomatic fast-track security, boarding the plane, all of it felt surreal. Nathan found himself in the first-class seat, laptop open, trying to work but unable to focus on anything except the questions spinning through his mind. Why hadn't Naomi told him? Had she planned to never tell him at all? Would he have gone his whole life not knowing he had children if she hadn't accidentally sent that message? And beneath the anger and confusion was something else. Something that felt like the ground shifting beneath his feet. He was going to be a father. His children were about to be born, possibly right now while he was trapped on a plane over the Pacific Ocean. Children who might not survive, according to Naomi's desperate message. Nathan pulled up everything he could find on his phone about multiple births, premature delivery, high-risk pregnancies. The information was overwhelming and terrifying. Complications. NICU stays. Developmental delays. Medical interventions. Each article he read made the fear tighten around his chest. Somewhere over the ocean, at hour 6 of the 11-hour flight, Nathan gave up trying to work or research and just sat with his thoughts. He remembered the last time he'd seen Naomi in that lawyer's office signing the divorce papers. She'd looked so sad, so defeated, and he'd felt relieved because at least the fighting was over. At least he could get back to work without the constant guilt of disappointing her. What a fool he'd been. What an absolute fool. He'd chosen work over the woman he loved. Had convinced himself that building his company was more important than building his marriage. And now Naomi was in a hospital, alone, dealing with a crisis that he should have been there for from the beginning. The plane couldn't move fast enough. Nathan watched the flight map on the screen, watched the little airplane icon crawl across the Pacific, then across the United States. Every minute felt like an hour. Every hour felt like a day. When they finally landed at O'Hare, Nathan was the first one off the plane. He'd arranged for a car service, and the driver was waiting with his name on a sign. Mercy General, and don't worry about speed limits, Nathan said, climbing into the back seat. The city lights of Chicago blurred past the windows. Nathan had grown up here, built his company here, but tonight it all looked foreign and distant. The only thing that mattered was getting to that hospital, getting to Naomi, making sure she and the babies were okay. His phone buzzed with messages from his assistant, his board members, people wanting to know why he'd suddenly left Tokyo mid-trip. Nathan ignored all of them except one from his lawyer confirming that the hospital had been contacted and was aware he was on his way and would be covering all expenses. The hospital loomed ahead, a sprawling complex of buildings. The driver pulled up to the main entrance and Nathan was out of the car before it fully stopped, his carry-on bag forgotten in the back seat, focused only on getting inside. The information desk directed him to the high-risk pregnancy unit on the 7th floor. Nathan took the stairs because the elevators felt too slow, his heart pounding as he climbed. At the nurse's station he tried to catch his breath and sound calm. "I'm looking for Naomi Thompson. I'm the father. I just flew in from Tokyo." The nurse looked up, recognition crossing her face. "Mr. Bradford. The administration told us you were coming. Let me page Dr. Chin. She's Miss Thompson's physician. She'll want to speak with you. Where is Naomi? Is she okay? The babies? Dr. Chin will explain everything. Please have a seat in the family waiting area." But Nathan couldn't sit. He paced the small room, his mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. What if he was too late? What if something had happened while he was on that plane? What if Naomi refused to see him, refused his help, told him to leave? Footsteps approached, and a woman in a white coat entered the waiting area. She was in her 40s, with kind but tired eyes. "Mr. Bradford? I'm Dr. Patricia Chin. I've been caring for Naomi throughout her pregnancy." "Throughout her pregnancy?" Nathan's voice came out sharper than he intended. "How far along is she? When did this start?" "Perhaps we should sit down," Dr. Chin suggested gently. "I'd rather stand. Please just tell me what's going on. Is Naomi okay? The babies?" Dr. Chin nodded, seeming to understand his need for direct information. "Naomi is currently 32 weeks pregnant with triplets. 2 boys and a girl. She developed severe preeclampsia, and her water broke early this morning. We delivered the babies via emergency cesarean section about 5 hours ago." "Triplets?" Nathan felt his legs go weak. He sank into one of the waiting room chairs. 3 babies. "Yes. They're currently in the NICU. All 3 are alive but they're very small and premature. They're going to need extensive care. Weeks, possibly months in the hospital." "And Naomi?" "She's in recovery. The surgery went well, but she lost a significant amount of blood. We're monitoring her closely. She's stable but exhausted." Nathan put his head in his hands trying to process everything. 3 babies. Born 5 hours ago. Alive but fragile. And Naomi, who'd gone through all of this alone, who'd been pregnant for 7 months without telling him, who was now recovering from surgery that he should have been there for. "Can I see her?" he asked. "She's sleeping right now. The anesthesia and exhaustion have taken their toll. But yes, you can see her. And the babies if you'd like." "I'd like to see them. All of them." Dr. Chen led him down a hallway, talking as they walked. "Mr. Bradford, I want you to understand what you're looking at before we go in. These babies are very small. They're on ventilators to help them breathe. They have feeding tubes, monitors for lines. Can be overwhelming, even frightening. But the NICU staff is excellent, and we're doing everything possible." They stopped at a large window looking into the NICU. Dr. Chin pointed to 3 isolates grouped together. "There they are. Your children." Nathan stepped closer to the window, and his entire world narrowed to 3 tiny humans, each one barely larger than his hand, each one fighting for life. They were covered in wires and tubes, their skin almost translucent, their tiny chests rising and falling with mechanical precision. His children. His son and daughter. 3 miracles he hadn't known existed until hours ago. "They're so small," he whispered. "They are. But they're fighters. All 3 of them." Dr. Chin paused. "Mr. Bradford, I need to be straightforward with you about the financial situation. The level of care these babies need, potentially for months, is going to be extraordinarily expensive. Naomi's insurance has limits and she's already reached most of them. The estimated costs moving forward could easily exceed $300,000, possibly much more depending on how their care progresses." "I don't care about the cost," Nathan said, unable to look away from his children. "Whatever they need. Whatever Naomi needs. Money is not an object. Not even a consideration." "I'm glad to hear that because these babies deserve every chance to thrive. Now, would you like to see Naomi?" Nathan followed Dr. Chin to a recovery room. Through the small window in the door, he could see Naomi lying in the bed, asleep, her beautiful face peaceful despite the circumstances. There was a woman sitting beside her, must be Yolanda, the one who did get the text. He hesitated, his hand on the door handle. What would he say to her? How did you begin a conversation like this? But before he could decide, the woman beside Naomi's bed looked up and saw him through the window. Her eyes widened and she stood up, coming to the door. She stepped out into the hallway, closing the door quietly behind her. You must be Nathan, she said, her voice cool but not hostile. I'm Yolanda, Naomi's sister. She texted me by mistake, Nathan explained. She thought she was texting you. I came as soon as I saw it. Yolanda studied him for a long moment, and Nathan felt like he was being weighed and measured. Finally she nodded. She's been dealing with this alone. All of it. The pregnancy, the complications, the fear. She didn't want to tell you. Why not? The question came out raw. Because you chose work over her. Because you walked away from your marriage without looking back. Because she was scared you wouldn't care. Yolanda's voice was matter-of-fact, not accusing, just stating facts. But you're here now. So I'm asking you straight, are you here to help, or are you here out of obligation? Because if it's obligation you can leave right now. She doesn't need someone who's going to resent her and those babies. Nathan looked through the window at Naomi sleeping, then thought about his 3 children fighting for life in the NICU. I'm here because they're mine. Because she needed help and I should have been here all along. Because I made mistakes, big ones, and I need to make this right. Yolanda searched his face, then nodded slowly. Okay. Then you should know that when she wakes up she's going to be scared and probably defensive. She spent months convinced she had to do this alone. You showing up is going to bring up a lot of complicated feelings. I understand. Do you? Yolanda challenged. Because this isn't something you can fix with money and then walk away from. These are your children. They're going to need you for more than just your bank account. I know that. Nathan's voice was firm. I'm not walking away. Not from them. Not from her. Not this time. Yolanda held his gaze for another moment, then stepped aside. She's sleeping now. You can sit with her if you want. She'll probably wake up in an hour or so. Nathan entered the room quietly and pulled a chair close to Naomi's bedside. In sleep, she looked younger, more like the woman he'd married 4 years ago. There were dark circles under her eyes and a weariness to her features that made his chest ache. He'd done this to her. Not the pregnancy complications but the loneliness. The fear. The feeling that she had to face this alone. He'd divorced her and walked away, and she'd been left to carry 3 of his children by herself, dealing with every doctor's appointment, every scare, every moment of terror alone. And she'd been prepared to continue alone, to raise 3 babies as a single mother rather than reach out to him. That should have made him angry, but instead it just made him sad. Sad for what they'd lost. Sad for the trust he'd broken. Sad for all the moments he'd missed. Nathan reached out and gently took Naomi's hand. She didn't wake, but her fingers curled slightly around his, an unconscious gesture that gave him hope. I'm here, he whispered. And I'm not leaving. Not this time. Naomi woke slowly, swimming up through layers of fog and exhaustion. Her body felt heavy, and there was a dull ache in her abdomen. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was or why everything felt so strange. Then it all came rushing back. The hospital. The surgery. The babies. Her eyes flew open and she tried to sit up, but pain stopped her. A hand gently pressed her shoulder, keeping her from rising too quickly. Easy. You just had major surgery. That voice. Naomi turned her head and found Nathan sitting beside her bed, his face tired but alert, his hazel eyes watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Nathan. She blinked, wondering if she was hallucinating from the medications. What are you doing here? You texted me. From the hospital. You needed help. The memory surfaced, hazy and confused. She'd been trying to text Yolanda, hadn't she? But everything had been so chaotic, her mind so foggy. I didn't mean to. I was trying to reach Yoli. I know. But you reached me instead. Nathan's grip on her hand tightened slightly. Naomi, why didn't you tell me? About the babies. About any of this. Here it was. The conversation she dreaded for months. Naomi looked away, tears stinging her eyes. We were divorced. You'd moved on. I didn't want to trap you into something you didn't want. Trap me? Nathan's voice rose slightly, then he seemed to catch himself, taking a breath. These are my children. Our children. How could you think I wouldn't want to know? Because you didn't want me. The words came out small and broken. You chose work over our marriage. You couldn't make time for a wife, how were you going to make time for babies? I thought I was doing the right thing, letting you live your life without obligation. Nathan stood up, running a hand through his hair in frustration, then sat back down. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter but intense. I was an idiot. The divorce was the biggest mistake of my life. I let work consume me and I lost sight of what actually mattered. But Naomi, even at my worst, even when I was making terrible choices about us, if I'd known you were pregnant, I would have been there. I would have helped. Would you? Naomi finally looked at him, really looked at him. He looked exhausted, still wearing the same clothes he must have traveled in, his usually neat appearance disheveled. Or would you have written a check and gone back to Tokyo or London or wherever your next meeting was? The accusation hung between them. Nathan didn't answer immediately, and Naomi knew she'd struck a nerve. Because they both knew that 6 months ago, that's exactly what he might have done. I don't know what I would have done 6 months ago, Nathan finally said. I'd like to think I would have stepped up, but you're right that I wasn't in a good place. But I'm here now, Naomi. I flew 11 hours from Tokyo the second I got your text. I've talked to your doctors. I've seen our babies. And I'm not going anywhere. Our babies. Naomi's hands went to her stomach, feeling the flatness where 3 lives had been growing. Are they okay? Please tell me they're okay. Nathan's expression softened. They're alive. They're fighters. Dr. Chin says they're small and need a lot of care, but they're stable. He pulled out his phone and showed her pictures he'd taken through the NICU window. These are our children. Naomi looked at the photos of 3 tiny babies, each one impossibly small, covered in medical equipment. Her daughter and her 2 sons. She'd been so afraid she wouldn't get to meet them, wouldn't get to hold them, and here they were, fighting for every breath. They're beautiful, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. Can I see them? Can I go to them? Dr. Chin wants you to rest a bit longer, but yes, soon. She said maybe in a few hours she'll have someone bring you down in a wheelchair. Nathan hesitated, then added, I've talked to the hospital administration. All the medical bills, everything for you and the babies, it's covered. You don't need to worry about any of it. Naomi stiffened. Nathan, I can't let you just pay for everything. Why not? Because. She struggled to find the words. Because it's too much. Because I don't want to owe you. You don't owe me anything. These are my children too. Our children. Why wouldn't I pay for their care? It's not that simple. Actually, it is that simple. Nathan's voice was firm but not unkind. You need help. They need help. I have the resources to provide that help. There's no debt, no obligation, no strings attached. This is just me being their father. The word father hit Naomi in a way she hadn't expected. She'd spent so many months thinking of these babies as hers alone, her responsibility, her burden. Hearing Nathan claim his role in their lives, brought up complicated emotions she wasn't ready to process. I don't know if I can do this, she said softly. I don't know how to let you help. I don't know how to trust that you're really going to stay. Nathan moved his chair closer so he was right beside the bed. I understand. I broke your trust. I walked away when I should have fought for us. You have every reason to doubt me. But I'm asking you to let me prove myself now. Let me be here for you and for our children. Not because of obligation, not out of guilt, but because they're mine and I want to be their father. What about your company? What about all your meetings and deals and the empire you were building? I canceled everything for the next month. My assistant is handling what needs to be handled. The company will be fine without me for a while. And if it's not, then it's not. Because this. He gestured around the room, encompassing everything, the hospital, the babies in the NICU, Naomi in the bed. This is more important. Naomi wanted to believe him. Wanted to let herself hope that maybe Nathan had changed, that maybe the crisis had shifted something in him. But hope felt dangerous after so much disappointment. I need time, she said finally. I need to think about all of this. Right now, I just need to focus on the babies, on making sure they're okay. That's fair. And I'll be here. However long it takes. A knock on the door interrupted them. Yolanda poked her head in, saw that Naomi was awake and entered with a warm smile. There you are. How are you feeling? Sore. Confused. Tired. Naomi managed a weak smile. But alive. The babies are doing good, Yolanda said, coming to the other side of the bed. I just checked with the nurses. All 3 are holding their own. She glanced at Nathan and something passed between them, some kind of understanding or agreement. Yoli, Naomi said. Did you know he was here? He showed up a few hours ago. We had a talk. Yolanda's expression was neutral but not hostile. He seems serious about helping. Everyone keeps saying that. But how long until the next important meeting? The next deal that can't wait. There will always be meetings and deals, Nathan said. But there will never be another chance to be there for my children from the beginning. I miss the pregnancy. I miss the birth. I'm not missing anything else. Dr. Chin arrived then, checking Naomi's vitals and examining her incision. You're healing well. The surgery went smoothly, and your blood pressure has come down significantly. That's a very good sign. When can I see my babies? Naomi asked. How about right now? Dr. Chin smiled. I think they need to meet their mother. Let me get a wheelchair and we'll take you down. The journey from the recovery room to the NICU felt both too long and too short. Nathan walked beside the wheelchair as a nurse pushed Naomi through the hallways. Yolanda followed, her phone out, ready to document the moment. At the NICU entrance, they had to wash their hands thoroughly and put on gowns. The nurse explained the various rules and protocols, but Naomi barely heard her. All she could think about was getting to her babies. Inside the NICU, the lights were dimmed, and the sound of monitors and ventilators created a steady rhythm. The nurse led them to 3 isolettes arranged in a row. Baby A, Baby B, and Baby C, according to their birth order. This is your daughter, the nurse said, stopping at the first isolette. She was born first, weighing 2 pounds, 3 ounces. And these 2 handsome guys are your sons. They were 2 pounds even and 1 pound, 14 ounces. Naomi stared at the 3 tiny humans, her children, and felt her heart break and heal at the same time. They were so small, so fragile, covered in wires and tubes, but they were here. They were alive. They were hers. Can I touch them? She whispered. Of course. Just be gentle. Premature babies can be very sensitive to stimulation. The nurse opened the isolette, and Naomi reached in with a shaking hand. Her finger brushed against her daughter's tiny hand, and the baby's fingers curled around hers in an instinctive grip. Hi, baby girl, Naomi whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm your mama. I've been waiting to meet you. Nathan stood beside her, looking at their daughter with an expression of awe and fear and love all mixed together. She's perfect. They moved to each baby, Naomi touching them, talking to them while Nathan watched. When they reached their smallest son, the one who'd been born last, Naomi felt a surge of protective fierceness. You're a fighter, she told him. All 3 of you are fighters. You're going to grow big and strong, and I'm going to tell you this story someday about how you came into the world early and fought so hard to stay. After a while, exhaustion caught up with Naomi, and they took her back to her room. But before they left the NICU, Nathan turned to Dr. Chen. What do they need? What's the prognosis? What should we be preparing for? Dr. Chen gestured to her office, and they all moved there, Naomi still in the wheelchair. The doctor laid out the reality clearly: weeks, possibly months in the NICU. Respiratory support. Feeding tubes until they could nurse or take bottles. Possible complications like infections or developmental delays. Constant monitoring. Gradual improvement, hopefully, but no guarantees. The first 72 hours are critical, Dr. Chin explained. If they can make it through without major complications, their chances improve significantly. But we're looking at a long road ahead. Whatever they need, Nathan said immediately. Whatever equipment, whatever specialists, whatever makes their chances better. Cost is not a factor. I appreciate that, Dr. Chin said. Because yes, the care they need is expensive. But more than money, they need their parents. Skin-to-skin contact when they're stable enough. Your voices. Your presence. Premature babies do better when their parents are involved in their care. I'll be here every day, Naomi said. As soon as you release me, I'm coming back and staying. And I'll be here too, Nathan added. Whatever they need, whatever Naomi needs, I'm not leaving. Dr. Chin smiled. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. These babies are lucky to have parents who are committed to their care. Back in Naomi's room, after Yolanda left to go update her family and pick up some things for Naomi, Nathan and Naomi sat in silence for a while. Finally, Nathan spoke. We need to name them. They can't just be baby A, B, and C. I've been thinking about names for months, Naomi admitted. But I kept waiting, not wanting to jinx anything. Tell me what you were thinking. For our daughter. I like Grace. Because she's a gift we don't deserve. Nathan smiled. Grace Bradford. I like it. And the boys. I thought maybe Caleb and Joshua. Strong names. Biblical names. Names for fighters. Grace, Caleb, and Joshua. Nathan tested the names out. Our children. Our children, Naomi repeated, and for the first time since he'd arrived, she let herself really look at him, really see that he was here, present, engaged. You really canceled everything? Everything. My assistant said the board was shocked. One of the investors called me personally to ask if I was losing my mind. Nathan laughed softly. Maybe I am. But if this is losing my mind, it's the sanest I've felt in a long time. What does that mean? It means that for the past 6 months I've been running faster and faster, building and expanding and achieving, and I was miserable. I told myself it was because of the divorce, because of losing you. But it was more than that. It was knowing that I'd chosen wrong. That I'd sacrificed something real for something that ultimately doesn't matter. Your company doesn't matter? Not more than my family. Not more than my children. Not more than. He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. Not more than you. Naomi felt her breath catch. Nathan. I know it's too soon to talk about us. I know I have to earn back your trust. But I need you to know that I'm not here just for the babies. I'm here because I never stopped loving you. Because the divorce was a mistake. Because if you'll let me, I want to try again. I can't think about that right now, Naomi said honestly. There's too much else happening. 3 babies fighting for their lives. My body trying to heal. Everything is too much. I understand. And I'm not asking for an answer. I'm just telling you where I stand. So you know. They sat in silence again, but this time it felt different. Less hostile, less defensive. Just 2 people who'd hurt each other trying to find a way forward. You can stay, Naomi said finally. Help with the babies. Be here. But I need you to understand that actions matter more than words. Being here today is good, but I need to see that you'll be here tomorrow and next week and next month. I will be. I promise you, Naomi. I'm not going anywhere. And for now, in this moment, she chose to believe him. Not because trust was easy, but because their children deserved parents who could find a way to work together. And maybe, just maybe, in the process of learning to be parents, they could find their way back to each other too. The first week passed in a blur of hospital routines and cautious hope. True to his word, Nathan stayed. He found a hotel near the hospital and was there every morning when Naomi woke up, bringing her coffee and breakfast before they went down to the NICU together. The babies, Grace, Caleb, and Joshua, were holding their own. No major complications yet, though they remained on ventilators and needed constant monitoring. Every day brought small victories, a fraction of an ounce gained, oxygen levels improving slightly, stronger responses to touch and sound. Dr. Chin was pleased with their progress but cautious. The first week is just the beginning. We're looking at probably 8 to 10 weeks before they can come home, maybe longer. But so far, they're doing better than I expected for triplets born at 32 weeks. Nathan and Naomi fell into a routine. Mornings in the NICU, touching their babies through the isolette openings, talking to them, reading to them from children's books Nathan had bought at the hospital gift shop. Afternoons when Naomi needed to rest, and Nathan would sit in her room, working on his laptop but always present, always available when she needed something. Yolanda visited every evening, bringing home-cooked meals because hospital food was terrible, and sitting with Naomi while Nathan went back to his hotel to shower and change. On the 3rd day, Jerome and their kids came too, meeting their new cousins through the NICU glass, excited and curious. Uncle Nathan, Yolanda's daughter, 10-year-old Keisha. Wait, no, that's a forbidden name. I need a different name. Let me use Aaliyah instead. Uncle Nathan, Yolanda's daughter, 10-year-old Aaliyah, said during one visit, looking at Nathan with the directness only children possess. Are you and Aunt Naomi married again? Aaliyah. Yolanda scolded, but Nathan just smiled. Not yet, he said, glancing at Naomi. But I'm hoping your aunt will give me another chance someday. Naomi felt her cheeks warm. They hadn't talked more about their relationship, both focusing entirely on the babies. But she'd noticed things. The way Nathan's hand would find hers when they stood by the isolettes. How he'd arranged her pillows without being asked, brought her water before she was thirsty, seemed to anticipate her needs. How he'd sit up with her at night when she couldn't sleep, worried about the babies, and just listen while she talked through her fears. On the 5th day, Dr. Chin gave them permission to do skin-to-skin contact with Grace, who was the most stable of the 3. A NICU nurse carefully lifted the tiny baby out of her isolette, all her wires and tubes carefully managed, and placed her on Naomi's bare chest, a blanket covering them both. The weight of her daughter against her skin made Naomi's breath catch. Grace was so small, fitting easily on her mother's chest, but she was warm and alive, and Naomi could feel her tiny heartbeat against her own. Hi, sweet girl, Naomi whispered, tears streaming down her face. I've got you. Mama's got you. Nathan stood beside them, his hand on Naomi's shoulder, watching their daughter with an expression of such tenderness that it made Naomi's chest ache. This was what she'd wanted during their marriage. This presence, this focus, this sense that nothing else mattered more than this moment. After an hour they had to put Grace back in her isolette, but the nurse promised they could do it again tomorrow and maybe start with the boys soon too. That night, after Yolanda had left and Nathan was gathering his things to head back to the hotel, Naomi found herself not wanting him to go. "You could stay," she said. "There's a couch in here. It's not comfortable, but you could stay if you wanted." Nathan looked at her, surprise and something like hope crossing his face. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I don't want to be alone tonight. And you should be here. You're their father. You should be here." So Nathan stayed. He settled on the small couch with a blanket the nurse brought, and they talked quietly in the dim room. About the babies at first. About their fears and hopes. But gradually the conversation drifted to other topics. "I've been thinking," Nathan said. "About what you said. About how I chose work over our marriage. You were right. I got so caught up in building the company, improving myself, that I forgot why I was doing any of it in the first place." "Why were you doing it?" Naomi asked. "At first, for us. To build a good life, to be successful enough that we'd never have to worry. But somewhere along the way it stopped being about us and started being about the challenge. About winning. About being the best." He paused. "I lost sight of what actually mattered. I wasn't perfect either," Naomi admitted. "I could have communicated better. Could have been clearer about what I needed instead of just expecting you to know. I let resentment build up instead of dealing with problems as they came. We both made mistakes. But Naomi, I need you to know that leaving you was the biggest mistake I've ever made. Every day of the past 6 months I've regretted it. I just didn't know how to fix it. Didn't know if you'd even want me to try." "I didn't think you cared enough to try," Naomi said softly. "You seemed so ready to let me go. So resolved. I was trying to convince myself I was doing the right thing. Trying to believe that we'd both be better off apart. But I wasn't better. I was just more alone." They fell silent, both lost in thoughts of what had been and what might be. Finally, Naomi spoke again. "I'm not ready to jump back into a marriage. Too much has happened. Too much hurt that needs healing." "I know. I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking for a chance. To show you that I've changed. That I can be the man you need me to be. The father our children need me to be." "You're already being that," Naomi said. "These past few days you've been here. Present. Engaged. It's more than I expected. It's the bare minimum of what you and they deserve." Naomi looked at him across the darkened room, this man she'd loved and married and divorced, and saw someone different from the person she'd signed papers with 6 months ago. Or maybe not different. Maybe just more like the man he'd been when they first met. Before success and ambition had twisted his priorities. "We'll take it day by day," she said. "Focus on the babies. See how things go. That's all I'm asking for," Nathan said. "A chance to prove myself." The next morning, Nathan woke to find Naomi already up, dressed in a green maternity dress that Yolanda had brought her, sitting in the chair by the window. She looked tired but determined. "The nurse called," she explained. "Caleb had a rough night. They want us to come down." They rushed to the NICU to find Dr. Chen and the neonatal team clustered around Caleb's isolette. His oxygen saturation had dropped during the night, and they'd had to increase his ventilator settings. He was stable now, but it was a reminder of how fragile these early weeks were. "Is he going to be okay?" Naomi asked, her voice shaking. "We believe so," Dr. Chen said. "This is fairly common with premature babies. Their lungs are still developing and they can have setbacks. But we're managing it and he's responding to the increased support." Nathan stood behind Naomi, his hands on her shoulders, and together they watched their son fight. So small, so vulnerable, but fighting nonetheless. Over the next few days, Caleb improved again, his oxygen levels stabilizing. They were able to start skin-to-skin contact with both boys as well as continuing with Grace. Those hours, holding their children against their skin, became the highlight of each day. Naomi's body healed. The incision from her C-section closed, and her strength returned gradually. On the 10th day, Dr. Chin discharged her from the hospital with instructions to rest at home but cleared her to visit the NICU as much as she wanted. "You have my personal cell number," Dr. Chin said. "If anything changes or you have any concerns, call immediately. But Naomi, you need to take care of yourself too. These babies need you healthy and strong." Going home to her apartment felt strange. Naomi stood in her living room, looking at the 3 cribs in the nursery, the baby clothes neatly folded, everything waiting for children who wouldn't be coming home for weeks yet. Nathan, who'd driven her home, stood in the doorway, uncertain. Do you want me to stay? I could sleep on the couch. Or I could go back to the hotel if you want space. Naomi looked at him, and something in her chest softened. He'd been there every day. Had held her hand through the scary moments, celebrated the small victories, sat with her through the long, boring hours of waiting. He'd shown up in every way that mattered. Stay, she said. Not on the couch. You can sleep in the bed. We're adults. We can share a bed without it meaning anything more than sleep. Nathan smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Thank you. They fell into a new routine. Nathan stayed at the apartment with Naomi. They'd wake up early and go to the hospital together, spending most of the day in the NICU. They'd come home in the evening, have dinner, talk about the babies, and fall asleep exhausted. It felt almost like being married again, but different. Better in some ways. They communicated more, shared their thoughts and feelings, worked together as a team. Nathan's phone would ring sometimes with work calls, but he'd step away to take them and then come right back, never letting business consume his attention the way it used to. 2 weeks after the babies were born, Nathan sat Naomi down after they'd returned from the hospital. I need to tell you something. I've made some changes to my company structure. What kind of changes? I promoted my COO to CEO. She's more than capable, and honestly, she's better at the day-to-day operations than I am. I'm staying on as chairman of the board, but I'm stepping back from active management. Naomi stared at him. Nathan, that's your company. You built it from nothing. And it nearly cost me everything that actually matters. The company is successful. It'll continue to be successful with or without me running it every day. But our children only get one childhood. And we only get one chance to raise them together. He took her hand. I'm not going to miss it. Not this time. What about your ambition? Your drive? Won't you miss it? I'll still be involved. I'll still have the challenge of being chairman, of steering the board, of making big-picture decisions. But I won't be traveling constantly or working 16-hour days. I'll be here. With you and with them. Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. That's a big change. A big sacrifice. It's not a sacrifice. It's a choice. The choice I should have made 3 years ago. Nathan squeezed her hand. I love you, Naomi. I never stopped loving you. And I'm choosing you. Choosing us. Choosing our family. Nathan. She didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to throw her arms around him, to tell him she loved him too, that they could try again. But another part was still scared, still cautious, still remembering the pain of being left. You don't have to say anything, Nathan said gently. I just wanted you to know. So you understand that this isn't temporary. I'm not going anywhere. That night as they lay in bed, the space between them felt different. Charged with possibility. Naomi turned toward Nathan, and in the dim light from the street outside, she could see his face, his eyes watching her. Thank you, she said softly. For being here. For staying. For showing up. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. And when Nathan reached out and pulled her close, Naomi let him. Let herself rest against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, his arms around her feeling like home. They didn't talk about what it meant. Didn't label it or analyze it. Just held each other in the darkness, two people who'd lost their way finding their path back together. 3 weeks after the triplets were born, they were all doing well enough that Dr. Chin started talking about when they might be able to come home. Not immediately, still several more weeks, but the conversation shifted from survival to thriving, which felt like a miracle. Grace had been taken off the ventilator and was breathing on her own with just a little oxygen support. Caleb and Joshua were progressing more slowly but steadily. All three were gaining weight, responding to stimulation, showing personalities that were distinctly their own. Grace was the calm one, rarely fussing, content to be held and fed and looked at with her serious dark eyes. Caleb was the fighter, always squirming, always pushing against the boundaries of his isolette, determined to grow faster and stronger. Joshua was the sensitive one, needing more gentle handling, more quiet time, more reassurance. Naomi and Nathan spent hours in the NICU, learning their children, memorizing every detail. The nurses taught them how to change diapers on babies smaller than some dolls, how to feed them through tiny bottles when they were ready, how to read their cues and respond to their needs. One afternoon, while Naomi was doing skin-to-skin contact with Joshua, Yolanda pulled Nathan aside in the family waiting room. We need to talk. Nathan tensed, recognizing the serious tone. Okay. I've watched you these past few weeks. Seen how you've been with Naomi and the babies. And I have to admit, you've surprised me. I didn't think you'd actually stay. I told you I would. People tell me lots of things. But you've followed through and that matters. Yolanda paused. But I need to know something. What happens when life gets hard again? When the babies are home and you're dealing with 3 infants who need constant care? When work starts calling again and there are opportunities you have to pass up? Are you going to stick around or are you going to fall back into old patterns? Nathan met her gaze steadily. I understand why you're asking. And I can't predict the future or promise I'll never make mistakes. But I can tell you that I've learned something these past few weeks. The old patterns, the work obsession, it wasn't making me happy. It was just filling time, filling the void of knowing I'd ruined the best thing in my life. Being here, being present with Naomi and the babies, this is what makes me happy. This is what matters. Yolanda studied him for a long moment. My sister loves you. She's trying to protect herself, trying not to get hurt again, but I see how she looks at you. She's falling back in love with you if she ever stopped. So I'm going to tell you this once. If you hurt her again, if you break her heart after she's given you this second chance, I will make sure you regret it. She's been through enough. Those babies have been through enough. They deserve better. I know they do. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure they get it. Yolanda nodded slowly. Okay then. Just remember this conversation when things get tough. That evening, after they'd returned to the apartment and were having dinner at Naomi's small kitchen table, Nathan brought up something he'd been thinking about. I've been looking at houses. Naomi looked up from her plate. Houses? This apartment is great for one person, but it's not going to work for 3 babies. We need more space. Separate bedrooms for each of them as they get older. A yard maybe. Space for them to grow. Nathan, I can't afford a house right now. I'm still on unpaid leave from work. I know, but I can afford one. I was thinking we could find something together. Nothing crazy, just a good family home in a good neighborhood. Nathan. Naomi set down her fork. We're not married anymore. I can't let you buy me a house. Not for you. For them. For Grace and Caleb and Joshua. They deserve a real home, not their parents living separately. And he hesitated, then continued. And I was hoping maybe we could talk about changing that. Changing what? The not being married part. Naomi's breath caught. Are you asking me to remarry you? Not yet. Not officially. But I'm asking if you'd be open to the idea. If you'd consider giving us another real chance. Not just co-parenting but being together. Being a family. Naomi stood up, needing to move, to process. She walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. I'm scared, she admitted. Scared to trust this. Scared that once we're past the crisis, once life settles into routine, you'll go back to being the person you were. The person who chose everything else over me. Nathan came to stand beside her. I'm scared too. Scared I'll disappoint you. Scared I'll fall back into old habits. But Naomi, I'd rather be scared and trying than safe and alone. These past few weeks with you have reminded me of why I fell in love with you in the first place. Your strength, your compassion, your dedication to our children. I don't want to lose that again. I don't know if I can go through another divorce, Naomi said, her voice small. Once was almost too much. If we tried again and it didn't work, then we'll make sure it works. We'll go to therapy. We'll communicate better. We'll make our relationship a priority instead of an afterthought. We'll be intentional about it instead of just hoping everything works out. Naomi turned to face him fully. You really have changed, haven't you? I hope so. Or maybe I've just remembered who I actually want to be. Either way, I know that the life I was living before without you wasn't a life I want to go back to. You're halfway through this story and you might be wondering, can Nathan really change? Can they make it work this time? Most stories would rush to the happy ending now, but real relationships are more complicated than that. If you want to see how Naomi and Nathan navigate the challenges ahead, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. The journey from here gets even more intense, and you won't want to miss what happens when the babies finally come home. Drop a comment and let me know. Do you believe Nathan has really changed, or is Naomi setting herself up for heartbreak again? Naomi took Nathan's hand. I need you to understand something. If we do this, if we try again, it's not going to be like before. We can't just go back to what we had. We need to build something new. Something better. I agree completely. And I need to see that you can handle real life. Not just hospital visits and crisis mode. I need to see that when the babies come home and it's 3 a.m. and they're all crying and we're both exhausted, you're still going to be there. Not just physically but emotionally. Present. Engaged. I will be. I want to be. Nathan lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. Give me the chance to prove it. Naomi felt her resolve wavering. She'd spent so long protecting herself, so long convinced that she had to do this alone, that letting Nathan back in felt terrifying. But it also felt right. Felt like coming home after a long journey. Okay, she said softly. We can try. But slowly. One day at a time. Nathan pulled her into an embrace, and Naomi let herself sink into it, let herself feel the safety of his arms around her. They stood like that for a long time, two people who'd been broken learning how to be whole again. The next few weeks brought more progress with the babies. Grace came off oxygen completely. Caleb and Joshua moved to less invasive respiratory support. All three started taking bottles, though they still needed feeding tubes for some of their nutrition. Dr. Chen was pleased with their development and started giving concrete timelines for discharge. If they continue at this rate, she said during one of their regular meetings, we're looking at about 3 more weeks. 5 weeks total in the NICU, which is actually quite good for 32-week triplets. Naomi and Nathan started preparing in earnest. They moved to a larger apartment, a 3-bedroom place in a family-friendly neighborhood with a park nearby. Nathan hired a night nurse to help for the first few months, knowing they'd need the support. They took infant CPR classes together, learned about premature baby care, prepared themselves as much as possible for the challenge of bringing 3 tiny babies home. During one of these preparation classes, Nathan's phone rang with a call from his company. He glanced at it, then silenced it and put the phone away. When it rang again 10 minutes later, he turned it off completely. Don't you need to get that? Naomi asked. Nothing is more important than this class. Whatever it is, it can wait. Such a simple gesture, but it meant everything. The old Nathan would have stepped out to take the call, would have made everyone wait while he handled business. This Nathan stayed present, stayed focused on what mattered. On the baby's 1-month birthday, the hospital let them have a small celebration in the NICU family room. Yolanda and Jerome brought cupcakes, and the nurses who'd been caring for Grace, Caleb, and Joshua all stopped by to sing. The babies were still too small to eat cake, obviously, but the moment felt significant. 1 month of survival. 1 month of growth. 1 month of defying the odds. They're going to make it, Naomi said to Nathan as they stood together, looking at their sleeping children through the nursery window after the celebration. They're really going to be okay. They're going to be more than okay. They're going to be amazing. Look at how far they've already come. We've come far too, Naomi said. These past few weeks. I didn't think it was possible, but we found our way back to each other. Nathan turned to her, his expression serious. I know we said we'd take it slow. And we have been. But Naomi, I need you to know that I'm all in. Completely. I want to remarry you. I want to be a family officially, not just in practice. I want our children to grow up seeing their parents love each other, support each other, choose each other every day. Nathan. I'm not asking for an answer right now. I'm just telling you where my heart is. So when you're ready, when you feel safe enough to trust me completely, I'll be here. Waiting. Ready to make it official again. Naomi looked at this man who'd once broken her heart but was now putting it back together piece by piece. She thought about the past few weeks, about how he'd shown up every day, how he'd made their children and their relationship his priority, how he'd become the man she'd always known he could be. Ask me again when the babies come home, she said. When we've gotten through those first few weeks together. When you've experienced the full reality of what life with 3 infants is going to be like. If you still feel the same way then, if you're still here and still choosing us, then ask me again. And will you say yes? Naomi smiled, feeling hope bloom in her chest. Ask me and find out. Nathan kissed her then, right there in the NICU hallway, a kiss full of promise and possibility. And for the first time in a long time, Naomi let herself believe in happy endings. Not because everything was perfect, but because they were choosing each other despite the imperfections. Because love wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about showing up anyway day after day and doing the work of building something beautiful together. 5 weeks after they were born, on a bright morning in early spring, Grace, Caleb, and Joshua Bradford were cleared to go home. The day arrived with a mixture of excitement and terror. Naomi had been waiting for this moment for weeks, but now that it was here, she felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of caring for 3 premature babies without the constant support of the NICU nurses and monitors. Dr. Chen spent 2 hours going over discharge instructions, medication schedules, feeding plans, warning signs to watch for, and emergency procedures. You're going to be fine, she assured them, seeing the panic in both parents' faces. You've been doing most of their care for the past week anyway. The only difference is you won't have nurses standing by. But you have my number, the on-call pediatrician's number, and you know when to call 911. Nathan loaded 3 car seats into his SUV, triple-checking each installation. The night nurse, A kind woman named Patricia in her 50s with decades of experience with preemies, would start that evening. Yolanda and Jerome were waiting at the new apartment with food and help. The drive home was terrifying. Nathan drove 10 miles under the speed limit, taking every turn as if they were made of glass. Naomi sat in the back between the 3-car seats, checking breathing and heartbeats compulsively. When they pulled up to the apartment building, they found balloons tied to the entrance and a "Welcome Home Grace, Caleb and Joshua" banner hanging in the hallway. Yolanda had decorated, and several neighbors had signed the banner with well wishes. Getting 3 infant car seats up to the 3rd-floor apartment was an adventure that required multiple trips. By the time they had all the babies inside and settled, everyone was exhausted, but there was also a sense of accomplishment. They'd done it. The babies were home. That first week was chaos. The babies ate every 3 hours, which meant that between 3 of them, someone was always hungry. Diaper changes happened constantly. Sleep became a distant memory. Nathan and Naomi took shifts with Patricia's help, but even with 3 adults, caring for 3 infants was overwhelming. But Nathan didn't complain. Not once. At 3 a.m. when Caleb was screaming and Joshua had a dirty diaper and Grace was hungry, Nathan would be right there, handling it with patience and even humor. Who knew 3 little humans could produce this much bodily fluid? He joked while changing yet another diaper. Yolanda came by every afternoon to help and to check on them. On the 3rd day, she pulled Naomi aside while Nathan was settling the babies for a nap. "How's it going?" "Really? It's hard," Naomi admitted. "Harder than I expected. But we're managing. And Nathan." She paused, looking toward the nursery where she could hear Nathan singing softly to the babies. "He's amazing. He hasn't complained once. Hasn't checked his phone during the night shifts. Hasn't acted like any of this is beneath him or not his responsibility. He's proving himself," Yolanda observed. "He is. Every day. So what are you going to do about it?" Naomi knew what her sister was asking. "I don't know yet. I'm scared, Yoli. What if this is just the honeymoon period? What if once things settle into routine he goes back to his old ways? What if he doesn't? What if he's really changed? Are you going to spend the rest of your life waiting for him to disappoint you, or are you going to take a chance on happiness?" The question stayed with Naomi over the following days. She watched Nathan with their children, saw the gentleness in his hands as he cradled them, the patience in his voice when he soothed them, the dedication in showing up for every middle-of-the-night feeding even when he was clearly exhausted. 2 weeks after coming home, they had their first pediatrician appointment. All 3 babies had gained weight and were developing well. The doctor was pleased with their progress and said they were doing better than many full-term babies she'd seen. "You 2 are doing an excellent job," the pediatrician said. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up." In the car on the way home, Nathan reached over and took Naomi's hand. "We make a good team." "We do," Naomi agreed and felt something settle in her chest. A sense of rightness. Of being exactly where she was meant to be. That evening, after the babies were fed and sleeping, after Patricia had arrived for her night shift, Nathan suggested they sit on the small balcony off the living room. The spring air was mild and the city lights twinkled below them. "I have something for you," Nathan said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Naomi's heart started racing. "Nathan, before you say anything, just listen. I know I said I'd wait until we'd gotten through these first weeks with the babies. Well, we're 2 weeks in and I've never been more certain of anything in my life." He opened the box to reveal a ring. Not the engagement ring from their first marriage, but something new. A simple band with 3 small diamonds. One for each of our children. 3 miracles that brought us back together. "It's beautiful," Naomi whispered. "Naomi Thompson, I was a fool to let you go. I was blind to what mattered, obsessed with things that don't actually mean anything. But you've given me a second chance. You've let me back into your life, into our children's lives, and I don't want to waste another moment. Will you marry me? Will you let me be your husband again, for real this time, with no distractions and no divided attention?" Naomi looked at him, this man who'd broken her heart and then spent weeks carefully rebuilding it. She thought about how he'd shown up at the hospital. How he'd stayed through every difficult moment. How he'd changed his entire life to prioritize his family. How he'd proven day after day that he was serious about being present. She could say no. Could protect herself. Could keep the walls up just in case. But what kind of life was that? What kind of example would that set for their children? Love required risk. Required trust. Required choosing to believe in someone even when they'd failed before. And Nathan hadn't just asked for forgiveness. He'd Earned it through consistent action, through showing up, through being the partner she'd always needed him to be. Yes, she said, her voice strong and certain. Yes, I'll marry you. Nathan's face broke into the biggest smile she'd seen from him in years. He slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss that tasted like new beginnings and second chances and hope. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this, he promised. I know you will. Because you're not the same man I divorced. Or maybe you are, but you've remembered who you want to be. Either way, I trust you. I love you. And I want to build this life with you. They sat on that balcony for another hour talking about their future. About staying in Chicago or maybe moving somewhere with more space. About Nathan's continued role with his company and how to balance work and family. About raising 3 children who would grow up knowing they were loved fiercely by both parents. Inside, Patricia was handling the midnight feeding, giving them this rare moment of peace. They could hear her singing softly to the babies, a lullaby in Spanish that drifted through the open door. When should we do it? Nathan asked. Get married again? Soon. I don't want a big wedding this time. Just family. Just the people who matter. Something simple and meaningful. Whatever you want. As long as at the end of it, you're my wife again. They planned it for 3 weeks later, giving them time to get a marriage license and arrange a small ceremony. Yolanda and Jerome would be there, along with Patricia, Dr. Chin, who they'd invited as a thank you for saving their children, and a few close friends. The ceremony took place in the apartment's community garden on a Saturday afternoon. Grace, Caleb, and Joshua were 2 months old, still tiny but growing stronger every day. Yolanda held Grace, Jerome had Caleb, and Patricia cradled Joshua while Nathan and Naomi stood before a simple officiant and spoke vows they'd written themselves. I promise to choose you every day, Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion. To put our family first always. To be present, to be engaged, to show up not just physically but emotionally. I promise to learn from my mistakes and to never take you for granted again. I promise to trust you, Naomi said, tears streaming down her face. To give you grace when you're not perfect because none of us are. To communicate clearly instead of letting resentment build. To choose hope over fear and love over self-protection. I promise to build this life with you as true partners. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife again, everyone cheered and the babies, as if on cue, all started crying. The ceremony dissolved into laughter as parents rushed to soothe children, and Nathan and Naomi shared their first kiss as a married couple again while surrounded by the chaos of their beautiful, messy, perfect family. That night, after the small reception, after their guest had gone home, after the babies were asleep, Nathan and Naomi stood in the nursery watching their children sleep. 3 tiny miracles, each one breathing steadily, each one growing stronger every day. Thank you, Nathan said softly. For what? For the message. The one you sent by mistake. If you'd meant to text your sister like you planned, I might never have known about them. Might have gone my whole life missing out on this. Naomi leaned against him. Maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe it was meant to happen exactly the way it did. You finding out at the exact moment we needed you most. I like that idea. That somehow, even in the chaos and fear, everything was working out the way it should. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching their children, and Naomi felt a peace she hadn't felt in years. This was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not without challenges, but full of love and hope and the promise of all the days ahead. Grace made a small sound in her sleep, and both parents moved instinctively toward her crib. She settled back down without waking and they smiled at each other, already so in tune with their children's needs. Ready for another midnight feeding in about 2 hours? Nathan asked. With you? Always. And that was the truth of it. Whatever came next, whatever challenges they faced raising triplets, whatever obstacles life threw at them, they'd face it together. Not as 2 people forced together by circumstance, but as true partners who'd chosen each other again and again, until choosing each other became as natural as breathing. 6 months later, Grace, Caleb, and Joshua were thriving. They'd caught up to their adjusted age and were hitting all their developmental milestones. Grace was still the calm observer, Caleb the adventurous climber, and Joshua the sensitive snuggler. Each one unique, each one loved completely. Nathan had settled into his role as chairman, working from home most days, only going into the office when absolutely necessary. His company was thriving under the new CEO's leadership, and he discovered that he enjoyed the strategic oversight much more than the day-to-day management he'd been doing before. Naomi had started doing part-time counseling work from home, using video calls to meet with teens who needed support. It gave her a sense of purpose beyond motherhood while still allowing her to be present for her children. They'd moved to a house with a yard, a real family home where the babies could grow. The nursery had murals on the walls that Nathan had painted himself, scenes of adventure and joy and possibility. Life wasn't perfect. There were hard days when all three babies cried at once and no one slept. There were moments of frustration and exhaustion. There were disagreements about parenting styles and household management. But through it all, Nathan and Naomi chose each other. Chose to communicate. Chose to work through problems instead of running from them. One evening, after getting all three babies down to sleep, they collapsed on the couch together, exhausted but content. "You know what I realized today?" Naomi said, her head on Nathan's shoulder. "What's that?" "I'm happy. Really, genuinely happy. Not just content or okay, but actually happy." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "Me too. This life, this chaos, this beautiful mess we've created, it's everything I didn't know I needed." "No regrets about the company? About stepping back?" "Not even one. You and those three miracles in there are worth more than any business success could ever be." From the nursery they heard a cry starting. Caleb, probably ready for his evening feeding. Nathan started to get up, but Naomi pulled him back down for just a moment longer. "I love you," she said. "I love the life we're building. I love that we found our way back to each other. I love you too. Always have, always will." Then they were both up, moving toward their children, ready to handle whatever the night would bring. Together. Always together. And as they stood over the cribs, three pairs of eyes looking up at them with trust and love, Nathan and Naomi knew that this was what it was all about. Not the money or the success or the big gestures. Just showing up, day after day, choosing love over fear, hope over doubt, family over everything else. Three babies who'd fought so hard to survive. Two parents who'd fought just as hard to find their way back to each other. And a love that was stronger for having been broken and rebuilt. That was their story. Not perfect but real. Not easy but worth it. Not the ending but the beginning of something beautiful that would last a lifetime. Years later, when Grace, Caleb, and Joshua were old enough to ask how Mommy and Daddy got back together, Naomi and Nathan would tell them the truth. About the mistake that wasn't really a mistake. About the message sent in desperation that became the message that saved them all. About how sometimes the hardest moments in life lead to the most beautiful outcomes. And they'd tell their children that love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up. It's about choosing each other even when it's hard. It's about kindness and hope and the belief that people can change, can grow, can become better versions of themselves. That was the legacy they wanted to leave. Not wealth or success but love. Real, messy, complicated, beautiful love that persevered through everything and came out stronger on the other side. And every night, when they tucked their three miracles into bed, Nathan and Naomi would look at each other and know that every struggle, every tear, every moment of fear had been worth it to get to this place. Together. Finally and forever together.